Everybody. We have a packed session, so if you guys see some empty seats, please make sure people who are standing in the back can come there. So I like this packed session on Thursday morning. How is Ignite so far? Good? Okay, we'll make it better today. And I'm sure all of you are very interested in the session. I can see a packed session. We love that. So today we're going to talk about monitoring your infrastructure and analyzing operational logs at scale using with Azure Monitor. How many of you actually use Azure Monitor, App Insights, Log Analytics? Okay, quite a few on this side. Oh, quite a few on this side also. Very good. So I think we will go into more details about what are the different capabilities and what we have launched this Ignite, actually. We'll go over that. I'm Ketan Gilani. I'm the GPM on the Azure Monitor team. I'll be joined by Keiko. She is also a PM on the Azure Monitor team, working on containers. Exciting stuff. Let's get started. I'll actually pretty quickly skip through some of the couple slides because you may have been in an overview session that was there on Azure Monitor. At this Ignite, basically, we're launching what we call as a unified Azure Monitor. So think about this way in terms of all the telemetry that's coming from your applications, from your machines, from your custom sources. We are actually putting them in a common backend for metrics and for powerful log analytics platform. And when you have this data in the common backend, you can actually generate an end-to-end insights that allows you to kind of dig into your application issue or your infrastructure issue, whether it's a VM, whether it's a container, whether it's underlying network. You can dig into those issues. And also it gives you a kind of a bird's eye view of your infrastructure, of your application at the same time. And I have been in this industry for quite some time. I know that monitoring is not done in isolation. Almost all of you, will have different tools that you work with. You have maybe some working with Jira, some working with other DevOps tools that are there, some working with other SIM tools like Splunk might be there. So this monitoring is not in isolation. So we didn't want to create an island of Azure Monitor. We want to be best in Azure, but at the same time, we want to make sure we integrate well with our ecosystem too. So we have a rich set of integrations that are there with the DevOps tools or SIM tools that are there. There was a session earlier in the week, I have a reference in the back in the slide there that you can actually go over on the integration pieces. So Azure Monitor, when I talk about unified monitoring, you can think about on the left-hand side, you can think about all this telemetry sources. So you have applications that are coming in, which are putting custom telemetry or the telemetry that comes out of the box. You have operating system or platform-generated telemetry that's out there. And these could be coming from on-premise systems or systems running in other clouds too. And then, of course, you have telemetry coming from the Azure resources, which we enrich even more because we know the platform the best. And then you have basically the other metadata information like the subscription, like the tenant, all that stuff from the Azure perspective, it's there. All of this is collected into a central store, which is for metrics and logs. And on top of this, actually, what we will cover today actually is not all of this, of course, but we will focus on a couple things here, or a few things here. On the top layer, we have what we call rich insights. So for top of the Azure services, for top things like, say, app services, we have application insights. Azure functions, we have application insights, or .NET apps, or Node.js, or Java apps. We have rich insights for your applications provided by application insights. And then we have containers for Azure Kubernetes services, which we launched in Build earlier this year. Rich insights for your containers, looking at health and performance of your containers. Today, we are launching Azure Monitor for VMs, which gives you the same set of rich telemetry for your virtual machines and infrastructure there. So we'll talk about that today in depth. We'll also talk more in depth about log analytics, which is the powerful analytics platform that we have for logs Basically, it's an underlying infrastructure for all the other telemetry that we are collecting also from Azure resources. Maybe it's Security Center. Actually, we also announced earlier was the AAD logs that are coming into Log Analytics also. So you see that also there. And then we'll touch a little bit on the alerts too, because anyway, monitoring is never complete until you have some sort of alerting there with the actions there. So we'll kind of cover some of that. Okay? So let's dive into Azure Monitor for VMs. So again, it's a preview that we have launched. It's open to everybody. We have already seen a big bump, actually, as we saw in Ignite. We saw a big bump of a number of people trying it out already. And we want you to try that also. What are the challenges that we see in VM monitoring, and why did we do that, actually? So you can see some of the customer quotes. You can read it. But if I were to summarize this in few sentences, basically, if you think about the first thing I've heard, even in this conference and probably a million times before, is what do I monitor? How do I figure out what do I monitor? And that's one of the big questions, very hard to answer. How do I disambiguate issues from a VM that I have versus, is it an Azure issue, Azure Resource Health issue, Azure Platform issue? Or even when I have thousands of VMs running or hundreds of VMs running, how do I isolate kind of a top-end VMs that I have that could be resource constrained in there? Or even how do I actually look at the dependencies of my VMs across the processes that are running, how they are interacting with each other? How do I determine the health and availability across my resource groups, across my subscription in there? It's a very hard problem to solve. So Azure Monitor, what we have tried to do is basically try a step towards that. We actually try and figure out, we have, how many actually of you are using System Center SCOM? Okay, quite a few. So when you see a slide or when you see a demo that kind of resonates with you, I need to hear you clap, okay? So we have actually out of basically, I guess, 15 years of SCOM, 15, 20 years of, almost 18 years of SCOM, you can think about that we have rich set of monitors that SCOMs have defined, and then we're starting to bring that stuff in Azure Monitor. And that's the power that you get. Hey, you can jumpstart your monitoring with this predefined monitors that we have, and on near real time, you can get some of the monitoring of your key metrics that are coming out of the VMs. Then we also provide rich health diagnostics on the VMs also that helps you to localize the issues fast. We are familiar with the KB articles that are there. We will also publish those, link those KB articles to the issues that are there so you can actually still troubleshoot the issues faster. And of course, you want to customize your own alerting thresholds that you may have. So another pillar of Azure Monitor for VMs is basically the performance pillar, where you want to look at aggregate metrics across your thousands of VMs. So I know in SCOM, you had management packs that allowed you to do that. Solutions that are there on Log Analytics today actually do some of those. But we wanted to provide you something out of the box. Not only that, but also figure out the top-end resources that are resource constrained among the thousands of VMs that you may have. Drill through the performance analysis. Run some diagnostic tools in there. So you see that in the demo. And then we have some built-in views of key performance indicators for your VMs. And finally, visualizing. Visualizing is really always a powerful tool, figuring out how your dependencies are interconnected, how your processes are interconnected. And also, many times it gives you surprise dependencies that you may not even know of in your system. This has been very, very well received also from customers who are actually trying to migrate to Azure. When they assess their systems, they figured out, I didn't know we had this many connections, or it was talking to this port or that port. So you can also look at live connection failures with powerful connection metrics. You can see, look at this network spikes in the traffic. And then, of course, from all of these scenarios, you'll be able to drill through the next level of details, whether it's into alerts or whether into logs or whether into metrics. And we cannot complete it without onboarding thinking. So when you think about all of these from a perspective of you, we want to make sure we make it onboard simpler and simpler. So we are definitely working towards that. So we are also have now a built-in policy for Azure Monitor for VMs, which you can actually have so that none of your VMs in Azure can go unmonitored. Basically, it allows you to monitor your existing VM. If a new VM is created in the resource group, it'll actually automatically monitor that. And you'll see that in a demo also in there. And if they fall out of compliance, you can quickly remediate that too. Okay? And finally, the alerts piece. The alerts piece just got better. As I was saying, the alerts piece just got better with one alert management experience. You can now configure alerts at scale. You have multi-resource alerting. So there was a lot of ask from the customers to say, hey, I want to be able to configure alerts, something like, hey, can I actually generate an alert based on a CPU threshold on any of my VMs in there? So you can do that. You can do that today. Then there's alert lifecycle management. I'll show you a little bit of that. And there is smart grouping of the alerts to reduce kind of the overall noise for the alerts that's there. So there was a session there yesterday which went into a little more details about the smart grouping and dynamic threshold-based alerting. So please check that out too. Okay, now let's get into the demo. And we'll get into the demo. That's number 6. Okay. So first thing I wanted to show you is Azure Monitor. Basically, it's a new Azure Monitor front homepage that you see. It gives you kind of what's, we actually added a tab called What's New and Tutorials and Demos. People had asked for, hey, we don't know what's coming, so you can always go to What's New now and figure out what's the latest out there. You can also look at the quick tutorials and demos there. The other thing you'll see is we have actually worked pretty closely with a lot of Azure resources to generate this consistency in here. So if you look at here, I'll zoom here, the alerts, metrics, and logs. If you look at that, we'll have a single alert management experience. You don't see alerts preview or alerts classic. You don't see metrics preview, metrics classic in there. But you have a single experience for each one of these, alerts, metrics, and logs. And not only that, in Azure Monitor, you have this experience, but when you go to the Azure resources themselves, you will have the same monitoring consistency there, where there's alerts, metrics, and logs, but it'll be scoped to that resource. So we are actually working with almost every Azure resource to have the same sort of consistency. And we have made quite a bit progress in there, and we'll continue to make more progress there as we go through the end of the year. Okay. The other thing I want to highlight here is the Insights tab. Insights. So you can see that, I have here Insights, which is one, rich insights for application insights. This you're familiar with already. And we are introducing what we call as virtual machines. This is basically the Azure Monitor for VMs, virtual machines preview, containers. We have a multi-cluster. We introduced containers that build, and it was there for single cluster. We're now introducing multi-cluster monitoring here at Azure Monitor, so you can manage at scale. So Keiko will show you that. And then we'll go into details of the virtual machine here. Okay. So I have the virtual machine kind of pulled up here. I'll give you a quick overview here a little bit, and then we'll go into the details here. So you can see that we have kind of the 3 pillars here, the health, performance, and map. As we go through the pillars, it immediately shows you, hey, there are some critical VMs in your resource group here. You can go into the performance and the map and basically see the different aspects of the VM. Here it shows you the top N VMs that are there for your resource group there. Or it can show you the map in terms of what the map looks like for your particular VM. Okay, so that, and what I want to do next is actually show you, what I want to show you here, actually not this one, let me just make sure I have it here. And you can see the map of your VM or how the VMs are connected. Now I want to show you how do I onboard to this wonderful capability that I have. So I have a policy that's there, and I'll show you, first of all, I want to show you, here's a different resource group. As you can see, it's a resource group that I have FabricAM RG or resource group here, and it shows you one computer here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to pull up policy. I'm going to pull up policy in here, which shows you kind of one policy that we have for Azure Monitor for VMs. What I'm going to do is basically look at this policy. And right now, there were like about some VMs that are non-compliant in there. There was only one VM that was compliant. And you can see all the non-compliant resources that are there for this policy that's there. And I can create a remediation task. I can also create a new VM in this resource group, and it'll automatically be enabled for monitoring. What I'm going to do here with the remediation task is deploy, maybe I'll look at the Linux ones first. So deploy kind of the log analytics is for Linux VMs here. And create the remediation task. And I will also create another one, which is one more remediation task for dependency agents. So we have two policies that are there that is part of this initiative that are there. And let's default the dependency agent. No, not the Windows, Linux. Okay? Remediate. So now this will basically, the remediation will run, and then we'll come back to it later in this session. Okay. So let's go back here. So you saw that we had a few critical VMs, and you also saw some alerts were fired too. So first, I'm going to go into the alerts. It just basically shows you a little bit of the two alerts that were fired. One was on Contoso Web 1, and one was on Contoso Jumpbox. We'll focus on Contoso Web 1. And you see the new alert was fired. It's about the memory, as you can see. What I'm going to do with the alert here is I'm going to say I'm going to acknowledge the alert. So now we have this alert lifecycle management. So I can acknowledge the alert. I can say change the alert state. I'm going to acknowledge the alert. Working on this at Ignite. Okay. So I've changed the alert state, basically acknowledges, so now they know somebody's working on it. The monitor condition is still fired. I'll go back to our Azure Monitor here. I'll look at the machines here. Now I look at the machines here and look at what's actually generating in there too. And you will see, we'll integrate more and more where you can dive directly from alert to there also. So is anybody familiar with this view? Okay, I need a clap then. Okay, cool. So now it's the same kind of rich diagnostic that you have. I'm going to go to critical, look at all my critical here, nothing in availability, but in performance I see my available memory is critical. I made it critical because for the demo. Basically, it shows you now the threshold here. As you can see, it's like 4,500, so 4.5 gig when it falls below 4.5 gig. Really, it was that I'd done for the demo. I'm going to change that threshold to 450 meg. So the alert should go away, and the memory should get resolved. So also the other thing actually you see that right here, you also have linked to kind of the KB articles that are there. So what the things was, what the monitor was about, what are the causes, what are the resolutions, potential resolutions are there. So that's one aspect there, okay? So we are basically shipping a rich set of monitors that come out of the box so that you don't need to know what you need to monitor. The monitors are there. You can configure them for your environment as you're customizing your environment or as you're building up your environment. Okay. So the other thing I want to show, actually, let me go back there. The other thing I wanted to show you was, so that experience you saw that was at the at-scale level. You see that at the at-scale level. The other thing I wanted to show you is also was when you go to the resource blade itself, so this is now a resource blade in VM. In the VM resource blade, as I was telling you about, you see the same kind of alerts, metrics. Logs there is there, but it's in preview right now. I'm not showing it here, but it's there in preview. Private preview will release it kind of a week after Ignite. So you can see the alerts, metrics, logs. You can see insights preview. The Insights preview, what you see in terms of the resource, will be the rich monitoring experiences that we'll have for some of the top resources. You saw for app services, you'll have application insights. For containers, you have the container ones. And for VM, we have this. And then we'll work with some of the other top services like storage and SQL in the coming months. So again, it shows you the same level here. But you can also look at the performance of the single VM that's there, the Contoso Web one in this case, as long as the conference Wi-Fi works pretty fast. So you can see that. How much time, actually, you can see very detailed information. So one of the quote, from our person who was testing it, hey, it took me 3 years. I've been waiting for this view for 3 years where I can see the logical disk of what's happening on my VM. How long does it take for you to get some of the rich information that we already provide, like this for a VM? For example, the logical disk size, or you can look at other properties of the VM right here. In this case, it'll be whether it's Azure VM or an on-premise VM, you can see the rich set of information that we also provide you, just the information about the VM. How long does it take for you to, if I were to tell you, okay, what version of the OS is running on the VM, I think it's pretty difficult. I was trying to find it myself, and it was like, I have to find out, first I have to connect to the VM, because when I go to the properties in Azure, I just see Windows or Linux. I don't see the version of OS that's running there. I don't see any agent versions that's running there. And it gets worse when you have Linux, because you have so many distribution of the OSs that are there and the versions that are there. So all that information is provided right at your fingertips. Otherwise, you'll have to go to connect and go into your Windows Explorer, go about the computer, and then you get all this information. So this is all there in just basically a click away. And also, it shows you the key metrics that are there for the VMs, for that the trend over the time, where the CPU, memory, available memory, logical disk, and those things in there. And then you can also connect to logs here. And we'll get in the log session a little later in more depth. But the other thing I want to point out to is actually run diagnostics. You can see this. I have a set of things here, which is basically, I'll not go through all of them. Resource group monitoring that was covered earlier in a session, in an overview session. Basically, now you can look at a resource group level to say, hey, this VM is part of this resource group. That resource group could have other applications there too. And you could actually see how that VM is, or basically how that resource group is impacted from the VM perspective, but also the other resources that are there. Azure Monitor, we went through the Azure Monitor. I'll go there again just to show you some of the at-scale views. And then the other one is run performance diagnostics for a single VM. So in this case, I can actually click on this run button. It'll allow you to do on-demand diagnostics. So I can click on run diagnostics here. And you can do, basically a number of analysis that's there. And you can run all these analysis that's there, and actually you can get detailed information about the reports. I'll just pull up the report that was there run earlier, and it'll show you kind of what was happening with the VM that's there. So this is also a very, very powerful tool that's bringing together and giving you kind of diagnosing the issues of a VM. In this case, it shows you about some of the high CPU usage that we had, a detailed report about that. If you click on that, it'll also go into the aspects about what's happening there. And you can go into the knowledge articles also and show you more details about you can download the report and go more details in the knowledge articles about what's happening there, okay? So going back to here. So I can jump now to Azure Monitor. Or of course, you can also see the map at the single VM level. So here also you can see the map, which is basically shows you the rich information about the map itself to say, okay, what is my VM talking to in this case? What is, how many connected servers, how many connected clients, you can see that. You can see if there were alerts on the VM, you would see that alerts there. If, in this case also, we have introduced what we call as connection metrics. So if you look at here, if you click on the links here, you will see the metrics on how the VM is performing in terms of the response time of this connection, the response or requests per minute that are going out of these connections there. And also, if there was a broken connection, these will appear as a broken, you'll see a red broken line there, which means a broken connection there. So you will immediately be able to identify that also. So again, very powerful capability from a visualization perspective. The other thing actually is there is also not only at the VM level, but if you look at also processes level. So here I can see all the processes that are running on the VM, okay? And I can even dig down to the details about the process. If I go here, let's just dig down into a little more detail. I can dig down here into the process level, get the information of what exactly is running. And it'll basically show you the detailed information about the process also. So if I click here, you will see the detailed information about the process, what exactly is being even executed here. You can see that, the command line also there. So all that information is there. So the process level connections also you can see. So that's also very powerful. Again, the same thing applies here. You can see the connection metrics that are there. You can see the process level information that's there. So all that rich information is provided by the maps there. Okay. Now I'll go into the Azure Monitor here. So let me just go into Azure Monitor. So here, so now this VM could be part of a resource group, and I want to see how all the other VMs are talking too. So that's where I can go into the Azure Monitor now and look at the map of a resource group that VM this is part of. Okay? So I can look at the map at the resource group level right here, and it'll show me the basically the map at the resource group level to see what the VM is talking about. So in this case, it's talking to a number of VMs here. It can show you that. At the same time, I can do the same thing with performance. You can look at the same aspects about the VM at the resource group level also, and looking at the charts there and looking at the details there in terms of what's happening with the VM there too. At the top-end list also, looking at that also in that aspect of what's happening there. Again, this actually works for since a lot of people are using SCOM, just want to emphasize that. You saw that actually, this works for both on-premise as well as for Azure VMs. The performance and maps work for both. The health right now only works for Azure VMs, but we will work on that too. So in this case, for example, you saw it gets me to the resource details or performance details. That's actually in the Azure that's there. But if there was an on-premise VM, you would not see the Azure details there. So you would not see that as far as if it was an on-premise VM. Okay? So that's kind of the demo that I wanted to go through. And what I will do next, okay, let me see. Go back to the slide. Five. Okay, there we go. Cover the slides. So what do you guys like the demo so far? What do you got so far? So now let's go to the slide. Let's go to the slides. We'll go to even better demo here with the containers, and then even better at the log analytics also. So we have quite a few things to show. So take it away, Keiko.
Yep. Thank you. So Azure Monitor for containers, for AKS mainly. So what we actually done was we went out to all the customers and asked them similar questions, like really open-ended questions, just to understand what is their pain point. So we're going through and say, what is your container monitoring pain point? And interestingly, we're seeing all this trend, and they're really similar to every single one of them. And by the way, how many people are using AKS right now? Cool. All right, so this is literally for you guys, and also for anybody who's trying it out soon. So interestingly, like we're actually seeing people actually saying, hey, you know what, we've done applications, and somehow it's actually having issues. And it's definitely not my code, but I don't know why it's not properly like running. Is my cluster healthy? Because cluster can actually affect that application. The other thing is there's a lot of flashy tools that gives me nice graphs. It looks pretty, but you know what? It doesn't really tell me anything. Can you guys try to help us out to do better troubleshooting guidance? And again, the other thing is this is a cluster. You want to dig in, and you want to go inside. But at the same time, I want to filter it, so I just look at my workload. So give me a way that I could do a drill down experience with the filter, as well as, you know what? In the past, like, you know, when Kubernetes started, there was no RBAC. Now there is. How do I actually not have my developers use kubectl? Or kubectl is actually a new product, because another tool, because kubectl itself, I've seen them actually destroy my cluster or have caused issues with it. So again, usability and control. And some of the pieces, yes, there is a lot of open source tools for Kubernetes and containers to do monitoring. But you know what? It's a lot of maintenance. I want to focus on my product that's actually going to generate revenue. Can anybody actually do that for us? And lastly, I'm on Azure. So can Microsoft actually provide that tool for us and give us that native monitoring experience? So we said, you know what? Why not? And we created Azure Monitor for containers. So as Ketan said, yes, we did public preview. It was part of Scott Guthrie's keynote at Build. Very popular. We got a lot of attraction, great. And what we did for Ignite was we actually added more features for you. One of the biggest pieces that we realized is that, you know what, there's no customer's going to have one cluster. They're going to have at least 3 with staging, development, and production. So we made it a multi-cluster view. But in this case, we don't really care about which workspace you're on. We don't care about which subscription. We'll do it cross-subscription, discover everything and tell you which one's monitored, which one's not, and give you a health roll-up view. And this is the first iteration of the health roll-up you're going to actually see. And we're going to be more sophisticated as we go along. And again, of course, when you're actually going to go into a cluster, you need to understand the health and performance of node controllers and containers. We do that. Give you that drill-down experience that you wanted to have and say, you know what, here's my hierarchy tree. And within there, let's actually filter it based upon what my workloads are, filtering with namespaces, services, and node filters. Again, I want to analyze my Kubernetes events. I want to actually correlate them and look at it as well as the container logs as well, too. And then have anybody seen like Corey's keynote this week with AKS, serverless Kubernetes, and all that? If not, OK. So what it is that now AKS, this is private preview from the AKS team, but you could actually connect it with a virtual node, which is a virtual kubelet. And think of it this way, where it's auto-scale. If a pod or workload actually explodes, you could actually spill it over to an ACI. So it's actually ACI plus AKS together with an auto-scaling. So it's called Container on Demand for AKS with virtual node. We do support that. So if you guys are trying that private preview, try our monitoring as well, too. It will pop up magically. And lastly, what is container without CI/CD pipeline? So what we did was we started integrating with the Azure DevOps projects. So now if you go into the Azure DevOps project, you'll actually see, and when you actually create AKS, it will automatically also create container monitoring and enable it in your onboarding. As simple as that. Okay. So with that said, before we actually go into the demo quickly, I just wanted to, sorry. There you go, sorry. I wanted to quickly introduce you to a case study. We just actually launched that build, but we have a lot of serious customers that actually liked our product and created a case study for us. And there's going to be more that's coming up. So Hafsland is actually a largest Nordic power company. And they use AKS. They use container monitoring, or Azure Monitor for containers with it. And of course, we do help them out with the monitoring, but not only that, they were able to fine-tune their containers and pods, limits and requests as well, too. There's a lot of stuff that you need to do. And the other thing is, they're actually saying, hey, you know what? I don't have to have my developers use these other tools now and do kubectls and all that. They could just actually look at this and then go through the monitoring. Okay. Cool? Is this actually good? So with that said, I'm going to actually jump into my demo now. All right. So as actually Ketan said, this year we've actually consolidated, made sure that we have the consistency experience on container monitoring. And then next year, here, what we did was we introduced the multi-cluster view. Regardless of what subscription it is, we could actually just pick it up for you. You just actually need to go into the global settings and then you actually set it. Right now, it's actually just one subscription, but it doesn't matter. I don't care about any other things. I will provide you all the information right off the bat, and also actually show you whether it's actually monitored or not. So here, all clusters should be monitored for obvious reasons, right? So I'm going to actually show you how onboarding really looks like. So I just click a button, and here it says, hey, you know what? We discovered all the workspace for you in your subscription. Or I could just create a new workspace for you. So just press that button. You're done. There's no prerequisite. There's no post-action that you need to do to be on monitoring, and you're already there. That's how simple it is. And we want to make sure that you have that native experience. And even on CLI, if you actually try to create AKS CLI, it's already in there as part of the add-on. So one-line command that could actually create AKS cluster as well as onboard to monitoring. That's all it is. Okay. So now, I actually see that well, there's 2 clusters that are having warning, but I'm going to look at the first one now. And normally, since my pod is saying that there's an issue, I normally drill in down to the user pods. But since this is a demo, I'm going to show you everything, what's actually happening. So here, immediately, what I'm showing you is an aggregated cluster view, where I'm giving you CPU and memory performances, as well as health on the bottom with nodes and pods. Here, what we did was we added percentiles, so you could understand how it's actually fluctuating. As containers and workloads actually come and go, you need to understand this fluctuation and see and size it. And this is what we do. Of course, you don't want an aggregation. Sure, that's fine. We actually could filter it. So let's say you want to do it per node. I could actually do that as well, too, and actually select particular nodes as well, and including services and namespace as well. And on the bottom, you'll see performance, the node condition as well as pod conditions. The important thing to understand is that we are capturing everything from Kubernetes. And it's really the Kubernetes perspective that's actually showing you, hey, is my node healthy? And by the way, these are Kubernetes terms called ready, not ready. And we're actually utilizing all that terms so that whoever is using Kubernetes is actually a lot more native. So here, we're actually providing that, as well as here on the right-hand side, I can see the pod counts. If the pod count actually starts getting higher and higher on the pendings or unscheduled, you know that there's something really wrong with cluster. So that's another indication. And here I have 1 pending pod that I could just now look into. But before doing that, let me just go and show you what the node view is. Again, capacity, the health of node, they're all very important. And here I could actually show you immediately what's going on with my nodes. I've reported 1 minute ago, and I'm actually telling you the health of it, as well as the performances of average and actual metrics as well, too. The one thing to be careful is that these are containers. They fail over easily. So you see that the counts are actually, the distribution is not equal. You need to have proper distributions, or else you can't pack your workload nicely. And again, that's the reason why Kubernetes is created. And on the right-hand side, you'll see the properties that we've actually provided that tells you what's the Kubernetes version, as well as operating system, and where they are. So this is actually Azure, and also what agent and whatnot. One of the other biggest piece that you're going to definitely see is the noisy neighbor. I have pods and all that I have actually created, and some people don't put limits properly on. So what it does is that it actually hogs up the entire performance or capacity. You just want to make sure that that's not the case. And here we could actually immediately identify and show you that by actually expanding it, and then you'll see it there. And again, here, in my case, it's Minecraft. So I'm like, oh, OK, I need to go look at Minecraft. Right? So I go to the controller view. I see all my workload. Here, you're also going to see the kube system pods as well, too. These are actually pods that are actually helping to run Kubernetes. You know what? I don't want to actually look at them. I just want to actually focus on my workloads. So here, this is all my workloads. And you can see that Minecraft is red hot. And I'm a little bit concerned about it. I'm going to expand that and drill down. And I'm actually seeing 80%. Yeah, that doesn't look good. But at the same time, it's 8 millicores. That's pretty small for performances. So let me look at my limits and requests here on the right-hand side. I see that I've actually put it on 10 millicore. That might be really low because I'm restarting my containers so many times now. So, and I've actually looked at my cluster view that I do have enough capacity to add more limits and increase that, so I could do that. And lastly, what I could do is I could actually even further check it by looking at the Kubernetes event logs. The Kubernetes event logs then would actually show me the pre-defined queries. So you don't have to define these. It would actually show you for that particular pod all the Kubernetes events. We also show you the container standard out, standard error as well, too. So that's pretty much what we have for containers.
Thanks, Diego.
Yep.
So we'll talk about the logs. We may go a little bit over, but I think you'll love it. So for logs, I think we have introduced, again, one log experience that we have across, we had different portals. We had Advanced Analytics portal we had OMS portal. So all of that is coming into as one logs experience then in Azure, embedded in Azure as kind of your central place for your monitoring there. We have also introduced actually role-based access per type. So in this case, you can think about per table. This was a big request from our customers, so we have introduced that. You can actually look at some of the queries and analysis, and you'll see that actually in my demo, so I'll not go through that. And then we actually also have launched a 4-hour. I highly recommend, if you have not taken the training, if you're using this language, if you're using Azure Monitor, this will be key things to learn on the Pluralsight training. It's a very well developed course. I have received feedback from people who have taken it. I think you will love it. So please definitely take time to take that course. The other aspect is the underlying platform that we're using for logs. We call it internally Kusto, but I think we launched actually as Azure Data Explorer. How many of you heard that we launched Azure Data Explorer? Okay, few of you. So I think that's the underlying platform now. It's also available externally as a PaaS service in there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump into our demo back so that we can go into more of the demo here. Let's go back. Okay. Okay. I wanted to show you, let's see. I wanted to show you this map. Let me refresh this screen. I don't know whether it's done yet or not. This was I had started onboarding through Azure Policy. As you can see that. How many VMs we onboarded? From 1 to, I don't know, 30 plus VMs I think are there. So it's pretty cool. Within 20 minutes, all those VMs are onboarded for monitoring. Azure Monitor for VMs. What do you guys think? Okay, so now go back to the logs. So again, the same place in Azure Monitor. We can click logs, and it will get to the logs here. I already have a screen open here. I'll go there. And you'll see the same, basically the same familiar experience that you have in Azure Log Analytics. It's right now embedded in Azure Portal. So different portals go away. Everything now goes in a central place in Log Analytics. You can look at your application telemetry. You can look at your infrastructure telemetry. And I'll show you some of the queries here. Very simply, you can start. Basically, again, the query language is very easy to learn. As you can see also here, we provide you some of the sample queries to jumpstart. For those who are familiar with OMS, you see the heartbeat events, some of the things in there, performance, usage data. You can see all that queries. You can jumpstart with some of the queries right there. But it's very simple to start with. Generally, when you put a space in here, it gives you kind of the table names and things that you start with. And you can basically start, and the IntelliSense is what helps you kind of looking at, encouraging you to explore data more and more. Also, I have a bunch of queries that I actually started with, and we'll go into some of those queries here. I'm going to open up right here, Query Explorer. Let me look at my own queries. Okay, so I have some queries. So we thought about analyzing operation at scale, right? So let's think about what the scale is. So you saw here on how much records we have here. So this is about 124 million records. That's over last 24 hours. Let me look at over last 30 days. The same thing again. Summarize is another one that you will probably use a lot when you are looking at the query. You are aggregating, you're summarizing. This is where you analyze your data. And it's about 2 billion records. It's about 2 billion records that we're going to analyze as we go through this stuff. Okay? So first thing many times you want to do is, okay, what types of records are there in this case? So again, as I was telling you, summarize is one of the keywords that you'll use a lot. And here you can see that I can have a simple summarize statement. It just shows you by type and orders by count in here. If I run the query, it'll just tell you what's happening, what are the types of records that are there. And you can see, highest number of data that we get is about the perf, is about 1.8 billion records from perf itself. Then you have the next one is container logs. You can also see, we are also seeing that containers is actually picking up pace. Even across our customers, we can see that containers is actually picking up pace as we are looking at the log analytics telemetry itself. Now, very simply, the other aspects that I wanted to show you was we have introduced something called, as you probably know, or you may not know actually, resource ID. So this is a key construct in Azure that you identify basically each resource with what we call as a resource ID. And we wanted to do that so that we can enable, first of all, RBAC that was there, and we can enable much more richer scenarios as we figure out if we are able to tag these records with the resource ID in here. So now you can see that I'm just looking at all the records that are there. I want to just group it by resource ID. So same thing, as you can see, there are a number of them are not grouped also by resource ID. We introduced this later, so the records that were there earlier were not tagged, okay? But the other capability powerful is that, hey, I want to look at the records that are there. They're coming out from what subscription and what resource groups. And resource ID now enables me to do that. Resource ID, if you're familiar with that, it has subscription, it has resource group, and so on and so forth. You'll see some of the IDs here, actually. You can look at it. Here's the subscription ID that's there, or the resource groups that's there. So how can I easily parse that? And here's a simple statement that I'm using. It's a very, very powerful command in basically Log Analytics here, which tells you how you can parse the records along the way as you're going, create a new field, and also aggregate on that. So I didn't have to create any new indices or anything like that, right? I'm going to create a new field called subscription. I'm going to create a new field called resource group out of the string that I'm actually there. How many times that we have actually given, put out logs out there, and then we feel that, I should have put an extra field there, and so I can aggregate on it. But in this case, you don't have to worry about it. You can actually parse real time and then perform aggregation on that at the same time. And it gives you that same speed. So in this case, I'm just going to take out the subscription, the resource group, and I want to count the records by that. Okay, so this is what I'm going to do. So again, I'm looking at the records that are there, about 2 billion records that are there. I can see, came back in about 3 seconds. And you can see that I have, by subscription, by resource group, the count of the records that are there. Contoso Azure HQ that we have been using has about 627 million records there, right? So these are some of the queries that I saw. And now let me look at a couple other things that are interesting. And this came from a customer, actually. They want to look at all the instances that were running of a particular process. It's just like when you have Chrome running, you have Chrome, different tabs running, and then how much each of these instances of the tabs actually occupying or utilizing that. So they actually have a query that was written here. You can see that query here. I'll not go into the details of the query, but again, just to tell you kind of what it outputs, it's pretty interesting. So in this case, for that particular group of computers I'm looking at, you will see that I have the query which tells you, you can see this. Let me just zoom here. The SQL Server, the advisor assessment name, the instance of the process name is actually taking most of the CPU in this case for the group of computers I was looking at. So you can look at that you can look at that very easily now. This is also came from a customer actually, and became one of my favorite queries is, again, many times you think about, I want to calculate the fields on the fly and figure out my SLA of what's happening, whether I'm meeting or not. Sometimes I'm looking at threshold or not. As you can see, what I've done is defined my SLA based on a response time of duration of 700 milliseconds. And I can see that, hey, if I'm actually not meeting 700 milliseconds, then I'm dipping my SLA. So I can look at the percentage that's there, and then I can see dipping my SLA here. The other powerful thing is, since it's the same platform, you can look at it from a perspective of, I can now have app and infra correlation. So this is also very powerful. So I have Contoso app, which is actually this app that's running Cloud Shop. That's the Contoso app that's running. And I can look at the data that's there. How does it relate? It's also running on Contoso Web 1 machine. How does the CPU relate to this duration of CPU? So let's look at, for example, the duration that's there. And I'm going to correlate that based on, you can see there's a spike on the duration here. I'm going to correlate that to the computer that's running there. So let's just correlate that query here. So this is basically, you can see, I'm actually joining the computer. On computer, I'm joining the, basically correlating the data from app, which is coming here from app cloud. This is from App Cloud, and then the other one is coming from the perf table for the computer there. So if I correlate that data and run this query based on the computer, you will see at least some correlation here in this case. You can see that this is the spike that happened. I did adjust the, since it was, request duration and CPU percentage are different, so I kind of adjusted that in terms of little scale. But you can look at the spike that happened here, and it's pretty correlated in terms of, hey, here's a spike of the CPU, or the spike of the request duration, and it corresponds to the spike of the CPU also. So that's pretty powerful, again, to look at app and infra together. The other aspect I want to show you is, as I'm showing you the queries, is the rich set of data that we have within the system. So in this case, if you look at another data, I showed you map data. Now, that map data is also available in system for you to query and do more analytics on it. Because, we cannot do, we can do visualizations of so many things, but that takes time many times. But developers tell us, give me the power, and we give you the power by giving you the data and giving you the analytics platform to use that power. So in this case, if you look at it, I'm giving you kind of all the data that we collect for map is also available for you to do the powerful analytics. So in this case, it just shows you kind of the computers that we collect and the memory in the computers that are there. The other one is the connection data that we have. So you saw some of the connection traffic that I was showing you on the map. I can show you that also right here. And you can actually do, a lot of people actually have done this queries which are showing you, this query actually shows you pretty well in terms of, hey, what are the different processes that are running, which direction they're communicating, what's the destination IP they're communicating, how many times they're communicating in here. So you can see some of the connection, how many times the connection it's making. And this was very, very useful for people who are using, assessing their environments and looking at their environments and figuring out what's happening to the environments. Are they actually going to a port that's not supposed to go in there? So you can look at that very easily with this connection analytics that we provide now with Log Analytics also there. Keiko also showed containers, right? So we want to do a lot more in containers. At the same time, given the amount of resources and time we have, we cannot do everything, but we want to give the power in your hands. So in this case, for example, what are the processes that are running in the containers, right? Can I identify the processes that are running in the containers? I can simply write a query because we collect all this data, rich data, put it in the analytics platform so you can actually do query on it. So in this case, it just shows you very easily, hey, what are the processes that are running on my containers? In this case, it shows you kind of what are the processes that are running on this container that I actually selected, and it shows you right then and there in terms of the processes that are running on the containers. So these are the queries that I wanted to show. I have sample queries. Evgeny also has done a great deal of queries or sample queries. They'll be all available, actually, if you wanted to have any of these sample queries. There are also, look at the sample queries on the Plural side that's there. I think it's a really great platform. The other aspect that I think we didn't have time to cover was Azure Security Center, AAD logs. All of those actually are using this Log Analytics platform. So all of that data will be also in that platform. Now you can correlate data that is coming from Security Center, update and change tracking, or AAD logs. All of that you can correlate in one place. That's very, very powerful from a Log Analytics perspective. Now, finally, I have a riddle for you. Actually, we have a lot of things to give away, but a simple riddle. Now, this is a query that we have written. I've not written it, but can you tell me what does query do? What will it produce?
Whoever could actually answer this would get our wonderful swag here. So if you
love Keiko that way. I forgot to bring the swag, but she brought it in.
Yeah. So this is our encouragement for you to come up to the stage.
Any guesses? I heard something. I heard something. 42 is my answer for everything, but this is not 42. I thought I heard an answer. Yes, pi. It actually calculates pi. And you can actually increase the precision by generating the number of points that's there, but it does calculate pi. So that's pretty cool, right? So you can do actually the tool that's there. There you go. Big hand for them. Anyway, this was more from a perspective of what I wanted to show was the power of the platform. I think it's very sometimes people don't realize the power that's there with the analytics platform. And I want to make sure that you are able to actually take that power and do more and more stuff with it. I'm pretty sure we will light up a lot more richer experiences also. But at the same time, I think you want to be able to answer any questions you have. And I think the platform provides you that. That's the takeaway I wanted from the log analytics piece, that you wanted to do that. Finally, I have a recap, just showing you, telling you a little bit of things of what we have, what I showed you. I'll not go through the slide quickly. Sorry, I'll not go through the slides here, but you can review it later. And we also have kind of the roadmap slide that's there, which kind of tells you kind of what are the things that are coming, in the next maybe 6 months to a 12 months time frame that we'll be working on. As we go through Azure Monitor, more and more unifying together. You can see some of the things like this, supporting live logs for containers, because for real-time monitoring that's there. Rich insights for storage and SQL, just like we did for VMs. We want to do storage and SQL. You would have more support in application insights for distributed tracings, better alerting with dynamic thresholds, as you see. You'll see that. And then latency improvements. So I think that's actually very key to our things. We are going to get metrics under 30 seconds. We're going to get logs under 5 minutes. We are almost there already. But I think both hot and warm path, we will be improving the latency significantly, even for, and then of course, then the alerting latency will also improve based on that. Okay? And here are the resources and related sessions that are there. So for your reference, most of them are over. But I think this for your reference, for you to view on demand. Yeah, networking is still there, yeah. Finally, I would definitely like, folks, please evaluate, give evaluation. We definitely value that. And whether you want to fill that or not, but to give us the feedback even directly to us, we value that too. So again, thank you for the session today. Thank you for attending the session. Thank you, everybody.